It's being called the digital Dunkirk. That's a reference to the evacuation of Allied soldiers during World War II from the beaches north of France. Now it is playing out in Afghanistan as hundreds of thousands of people, U.S. allies, are navigating Taliban checkpoints surrounding the Kabul airport. We've been covering the story of a group of local Marines working to get their interpreters out of the Middle East. And in the past 24 hours, they got the news they've been waiting for.
Yes, brother, I have a flight in an hour. We are waiting in a line to get a flight. They're already checked everything, sir. Yes, brother, thank you so much for all your efforts. Yeah, maybe after an hour you will get the flight.
Orlando is one of hundreds of thousands of essential U.S. allies during military operations in Afghanistan. These people worked in various roles helping Americans. And now, after months of working to get him and his pregnant wife out of harm's way, they were actually able to get on a flight and are now in the United States. But Orlando is just one of many.
It's not only my history. This is maybe more than thousands, interpreters. This is, history. This is not only me.
We had folks that would do our laundry. They would cook our meals. They would clean up areas and provide maintenance. So anybody that provided any kind of level of support to the U.S. mission or the whole NATO mission going on over the ISAF mission, they are in jeopardy for their support that they provided us. And our window of time to get these folks out of Afghanistan is shrinking every minute. And once that window closes, it's closed.
These interpreters are now targeted by the Taliban for standing alongside the U.S. According to reports, at least 300 have already been killed, with roughly 20,000 Afghan nationals and their family members backlogged for special immigrant visas to come to the U.S. Now a network of people are using satellite imagery to locate Taliban checkpoints surrounding the Kabul airport. It's being called the digital Dunkirk.
I am confident in the men and women on the ground right now. They're doing an impossible mission. It's been emotional times, absolutely.
Reports show the Taliban is ordering their fighters to shoot interpreters first. This in retribution for being the eyes and ears on the battlefield for the U.S. over the past 20 years. And now U.S. service members are fighting for those souls.
I will definitely get that across and try to get as many people as possible to advocate for you and the other interpreters that are still stuck in Kabul.
Yeah, I am hopeful for all your efforts, brothers. I know you're my big brother.
Absolutely.
Joining me now to discuss the withdrawal in Afghanistan is Representative Daryl Issa. Congressman, good to see you tonight.
Good to see you tonight, Ginger, and thanks for covering this. We've just come out of classified briefings where we've been updated on this horrific situation, but suffice to say what you're covering and the other stations are covering give the people a pretty good idea of the chaos.
Yeah, and there's a lot of support, too, going on here for some of the families that have already arrived. I know you have been key in working with cases like the one we profiled with Orlando, getting the State Department to process these special visas for our allies. But one of my main concerns is I know that any of these Afghan people, if they show up with papers that is basically their ticket to freedom, but it's also a big target on their back because the Taliban will know that they worked with us for the past 2 decades and they'll take action against them. So how do we get them out safely?
Well, between now and August 31st, it appears as though the Taliban have decided that they're not going to try and tell the difference between one person's visa and another. And so we are finding that in most cases, with the exception of some very high value, prominent people, where we're dealing with different security concerns, in most cases, a relatively standard form coming out of the embassy or former embassy is allowing people to get through the lines. The biggest challenge we have is that this plan is being done on the fly. Obviously, there was no plan for the kind of events that are occurring. And that means that when August 31st comes, and according to the new government, the Taliban government, they are not going to allow any Afghans to leave after that. They're going to, quote, preserve the people needed to rebuild the country. That really means that we've got to get them out before then, or they may not get out at all.
And I know that President Biden has said we're not going to be extending that deadline, but what happens if we do?
Well, if we do, then our military will be in great peril, not just from the Taliban, but also from ISIS and al-Qaeda actors who have every reason to do truck bombs, car bombs, attacks, maybe not against U.S. forces, but certainly against those waiting to come in. So right now it is treacherous as it is. Realistically, it is in our best interest to get every American out that wants to be out. And I say that not lightly, but every American needs to get out. And if they don't, after August 31st, there's a very high chance that we will have little or no assets available to get them out.
Do we have a for sure number of what kind of people we're trying to get out? Americans who want to get out and our allies? Because I know that's been a major concern, that we may think that number is one thing, but it's another. We exit and we've left, X amount of people behind.
One of the challenges, of course, is that when we use the term U.S. Citizens, they may very well be U.S. citizens who trace their ancestry or even their birth back to Afghanistan. So the number of U.S. citizens who just happen to be there is diminishing pretty quickly. Approximately 4,000 Americans have been taken out. 5,000 U.S. military personnel have been brought in to do this work. So with the exception of the 5,000 we brought in, we are getting relatively close to having removed from outside the perimeter the vast majority of those that we know are in country and we know want to leave. But just as I was on the phone after midnight last night with the superintendent of schools from the El Cajon area, dealing with 6 families and 23 young people who were talking to them through Facebook. Those are American permanent residents and citizens. They should be able to get out, but only last night were we beginning to make the State Department more aware of their need for travel credentials and a time to arrive.
Wow, there are so many levels to this. What would you say is our most immediate and biggest, no, I don't want to say fear factor, but what's our biggest issue right now in getting them out? Because I've been reading that some of these planes aren't even full that are coming out.
Well, some are over full. So they've set an all-time record for the number of people in a C-17 to leave the ground. So that's not the problem. The number of flights is absolutely amazing. In the case of where they go to, the United States is on the fly quickly finding additional countries to take these people on an interim basis. By this time tomorrow or the next day, we will be dealing with mostly non-U.S. citizens, mostly people that need to be vetted, which means they can't go directly to the United States. The vast majority are going to have to go to third-party countries where they'll go through a vetting process, and they may or may not end up in the U.S., but at least we'll have gotten them out safely. The current number may or may not be classified, so let's suffice to say that I think the public number is more than 20,000 people were lifted just yesterday. So the arithmetic of the remaining days is we can get about 100,000 out. Remember, 5,000 of those people are our U.S. military. And when you're leaving, when you're the last out, there's a very high exposure. The exposure to our men and women in uniform that are there as they finish up their role and start trying to get out. And perhaps the enemy is around them, or perhaps simply crowds of people who still want to get out. So when we're down to 4,000, 3,000, 2,000, and then a few hundred military people for that last flight or two, it could well be, and very possibly will be, similar to those last people holding on to the rails as the last helicopter left Saigon out of the embassy. So we do have a challenge, and the challenge is to get as much done before the 31st, to wrap up, if possible, by the 31st, this phase. And then, candidly, it's still going to be years of dealing with people that undoubtedly will have been trapped behind lines and unable to be identified in time.
Wow. Well, I know you are definitely on the front lines in D.C. right now, fighting for every soul that is over there. So I really appreciate your time, and I appreciate your efforts. Representative Darrell Issa, thank you so much tonight.